like to welcome everyone back to the City Manager Spotlight with me, Bruce Johnson, your City Manager, and I also like to welcome Maxine Pruitt. And Maxine, since this is only like the second time you've ever been on GTV 20 with a City Manager or anybody else, can you tell people what your title is and what you do here for the City of Guthrie?
I am Maxine Pruitt, and I am the Municipal Services Director for the City of Guthrie, which includes Public Works and streets, parks. What else?
A little bit of everything, and that's the great thing, Maxine, that I love about you is, one, your personality is fantastic. Secondly, you have become a director probably through a series that I haven't seen a director become, especially in someone that is typically a lot of public works. Can you tell people a little bit about how long you've worked for municipalities and what kind of positions you've held to get to where you are today?
I started with the City of Guthrie the first time in 1983 as purchasing agent. I was the first purchasing agent for the City of Guthrie, and I set up the first central purchasing program. I worked for the City of Guthrie for about 7 years, and then I went to the City of Moore and I did the same thing. I set their purchasing system up and worked with them and thought I was there for the rest of my duration. And I got a call one day and they wanted me to come back to the City of Guthrie. I had to think about it a little bit. I was happy at Moore. They were wonderful. But Guthrie was my home. And I was really happy to come back in 1998, and I've been here ever since. I worked as purchasing agent for a period of time, and in probably about 2004, I was promoted to Administrative Services Director, which took care of the library even, and that was something new for me. In 2007, Melody Kellogg was the city manager, and she wanted me in Public Works. She moved me to Public Works, and it was probably the best move I ever made. I've been there almost 9 years next month. I love it. It has been the most rewarding of all the jobs I've ever held, and I'm still there.
I agree with you. That's one of the things that drew me to local government growing up. I think I had to fill out an application the other day for something, and I had to put down my degrees. And put down I got a political science degree from Southwest Baptist University and a master's of public administration from the University of Missouri. But at the end of the day, what I really liked, and I could have went on and worked as a bureaucrat, either at the state or the federal level, but I always wanted to be next to the people. And I think your spirit and how you draw people in and act as a family, even in your own department, is kind of the approach I've always liked. And we get to provide the basic things that people need each and every day. We keep them safe, we keep them from illness, and we give them a way to and from work in each other day. And that's one of the great things that it is about being a director of public works. You're into all of that.
Oh, I am, and I love it.
Yeah, well, that's good. And I was going to ask you one thing about this. This is my first 89ers Day. First of all, the weather couldn't have been better. I just love the atmosphere. I love the number of people that had come in from out of town and in the region. And I was going to ask you, since a lot of people don't get to know this, kind of what is it that goes into making an 89ers Day from a public entity standpoint?
We are a support system. Of course, the American Legion is the ramrod of the 89er days, and we support them in every way that we can. Cleaning the streets, we make sure that the patches are done downtown. If there's any holes to fill, if there's sidewalks to be repaired, we take care of putting out the barricades. This year we did 230, which was, to me, that's a lot. But I have to say, we put them out, our police department puts them up. And it's a matter of communicating, it's a matter of working together. It is absolutely teamwork from all departments. We make sure there's water and electricity for the vendors that come in. And here again, just teamwork. A lot of communication.
Well, that's awesome. 230 barricades. I didn't even know it was that many. And another thing that we coordinate with too that I saw at the end of the parade, they happened within minutes after the parade, is our partnership with Waste Connections.
Absolutely.
And can you kind of tell a little bit what it takes not only before the parade, but what comes in after the parade and kind of the cleanup that goes involved too?
Well, Waste Connections provides 100 of the cardboard boxes, the disposable boxes, and they provide 6 8-yard roll-offs. Parks Department goes through and picks up the trash, empties it, and then Waste Connection dumps the roll-offs. That is a big job. It's a huge job. I think we probably had a lot more this year because of the beautiful weather that we had, but they were there. They had it all out. Once it was over with, we picked it up, and the streets were clean in just a short period.
Yeah. Can you kind of tell the people too exactly what kind of costs go in there just on our public side and out of your department in order to make the 89er statement happen?
This year, the cost went up like everything else. In 2013 and 14, it ran around $6,500. This year, it was $14,333. So you can see that the costs for labor, materials, equipment, everything is going up. And people need to know where their money's going.
Well, that's good, and I'm glad we keep track of that. And as we talk a little bit about more money, one of the items that had come back in this spring was the election of a 3/4 cent sales tax for capital improvement projects. And I know one of the biggest ticket items on there is going to be the improvement of a wastewater treatment plant. But can you kind of tell the people out there what your expectations are once we start collecting this money in July, kind of how that's going to affect your department and the operations overall of the city?
Of course, a lot of it will go to the wastewater treatment plant. That's huge. And we only have a short time to get this going before our next permit will be due. I think we have a little under 4 years now for that. That will be huge. My big hopes is that it will free up some of the other funding that we can start replacing some of our vehicles. Right now we have a number of vehicles that fall into the 18 to 20 year range that have well over 160, 170,000 miles on it. And that's throughout the departments. That may be streets, it's parks, line maintenance, just various areas. We do have need of equipment like these big tractors. We've been without a large tractor with a box blade and front end loader for probably 15 years. And it's very hard to do some of the work that we need to do without this equipment. If we go to fixing our own streets, $250,000 for lay-down rollers, we would need probably another large 10-yard dump truck. Then when you get this equipment, you have to have a place to keep it. We have a great place. Even after our tornado, we have great storage, we have good facilities for storing our equipment, but we will need more. They're filled. I would also like to see some things happening out at the cemetery. We have one of the most beautiful cemeteries in the state, but it needs some love. Like you said, we need that fence replaced, but we also need a place to keep our equipment. We have no place to put the trailers and the mowers when they're in use during the season, and we have paid a price for that. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping that this 3/4 cent sales tax will free up the money so we can get some of these things done. And the citizens deserve it.
Yeah, and I agree completely. And that's one of the things that Maxinne and I have talked about over the last 9 months, ever since my arrival as a city manager. And I kind of tell a simple story about my management philosophy when it comes to equipment, especially when it comes to operation and maintenance equipment. I was sitting around one night watching ESPN like a lot of people do, and I noticed that they were going through the locker room of the Dallas Mavericks. And this was back in the late 90s, right after, and maybe the early 2000s, after Mark Cuban had become the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. and they were going through the lockers, and each locker had a PlayStation, an Xbox, TV, maybe even a refrigerator, everything that you could ever want. And it was amazing to me that a millionaire was buying a multimillionaire was buying other millionaires such simple items to put in their locker. And they asked him why he made those lockers so spectacular, and he stated that when it comes to them playing on the basketball court, he didn't want them to have any excuses. And I feel oftentimes it's the same way in other organizations, that one, when you ask my directors to hand down the day-to-day routines to our frontline employees, that the AA have the equipment to be able to go out there and do that. But also, once they see that equipment, they're operating that equipment, and they're going forward, is that they're actually excited to come to work in each and every day. They're not worrying about what's going to break down, what's going to rust out, what's not going to be there, and not necessarily going to have to improvise to make a temporary fix better, other than wanting to go out there and make some permanent fixes out there. And those are some of the items that we had talked about, from wastewater treatment plants to cemeteries to fleet to things that we can go out and be much more flexible when it comes to when and where and how we go out and do our street improvements from here on out. So that was a little bit today for our Public Works Department and our Director, Maxinne Pruitt. I'd like to thank her for being here today, letting us know a little bit about your history,
Thank you.
and a little bit about your department. And right now, I'd like to throw it over to Choctaw with Dr. Mike Simpson.
Welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm Mike Simpson, Superintendent of Guthrie Public Schools. Today we've got Dennis Schultz, Assistant Superintendent. Dennis has many hats for our district, but one of the hats that he's worn the most in the recent terms of what we've been dealing with our school district is finance. And Dennis, you've been with the district for a long time. You've seen a lot of things. You've been in school business for a long time. You've been in finance, both in Mustang and in Guthrie. How long have you been in Guthrie again?
18 years.
18 years. So you've seen the things come and go, good times, bad times. We've never had times as good as we'd like them, but we've certainly had some challenging times. Have you ever seen finances the way they are right now in our state, and especially for schools?
Not at all. This is as bad as it's ever been. It's kind of been a accumulation of a lot of factors this time that have worked against school districts in the area of finance. So this is as tough as it's probably ever been.
Well, you know, I gave a presentation to the board the other night, and we're going to go out to give presentations to the school buildings, but the presentation is called Perfect Storm. Talk about, is that accurate, and talk about where we are right now.
Yeah, I think that's more than accurate. It seems like I said before that so many things have come together all at once. The downturn in the economy based on the oil industry and the loss of gross production tax to our school district,
Yeah.
which was a large source of revenue. We actually, at the same time we're losing gross production tax, are being charged in our state aid formula for gross production taxes that we collected last year. So we're actually getting a state aid reduction on top of a reduction in gross production tax, which just compounds the problem there.
Doesn't seem fair, does it?
It's not right. It's not.
Okay, so we've got all this going on, and the thing that I always hear when people want to talk about school finance and they don't have enough money, what about the lottery? Tell us why the lottery isn't solving all this.
You know, in 2007, I believe, was the first year we received lottery funds. That's also the year that the legislature mandated a $3,000 raise for all teachers, which was sorely needed. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that those pay increases are a recurring cost. We have those every year, and it really cost us more to give those raises than the lottery proceeds that we received. So in the first year, that was gone as far as being able to be used for any other purpose. So every year, the lottery money we get is eaten up by the $3,000 teacher raise, and it gives us no relief for these other things that we're dealing with.
So another, what we call unfunded mandate that we've gotten from the state. Well, that's a problem. And so now we've got all this going on, And let's talk a little bit about what we've lost this year. Because I know the figure I've got in my presentation is about 1.2 million in this year. How do we keep the doors open?
This year we had enough fund balance and made enough cuts in anticipation of this that with the action by the legislature to go ahead and use some rainy day money to kind of help us out through this year, we'll weather this. We will deplete our fund balance to some extent, but that's why it's there, is for times like this. Next year is going to be the real problem. We're looking at another $1 million in cuts for next year, and we really can't afford to let the status quo go on and eat into that fund balance more for next year. So that's our real challenge, is where do we find the ways to weather this for another year?
And you know, the thing that I've struggled with the most with all this is if we had done something wrong as a school district, okay, that's on us, we've screwed up, we need to fix it. But there was no way to prepare for what we've been through this year that I can see. And I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. We made preparations based upon what we knew.
Yeah.
And as the picture has changed, and it's changed dramatically, and it's changed often throughout the course of this fiscal year, we've adjusted as much as we could, but we have obligations that we've already entered into, contracted salary obligations and insurance premiums and things like utilities that we have to pay. So there's very little room to adjust on the fly in the middle of a school year.
Yeah, and you know, the thing that I've struggled with the most, a lot of people that are in private business, they can make changes with personnel in a much easier fashion than we can. We have people that are under contract, and we have to honor those contracts. And so it's more than just saying, okay, we've got to let a bunch of people go in the middle of a school year or something like that because we can't afford to pay them. And we do have the money to pay them right now. We're not in that situation because of the outstanding work that you've done as a CFO in our district. And we've been very conservative historically as a district. We're very lean. But when you're very lean like we are in our school district, it makes it even tougher in times like this because it's hard to protect programs and staff. And you know, the thing that we talk about all the time is the cost of personnel and salaries. And you know, over 92% of our expenditures are for either salaries or things that we can't control, such as utilities and fuel and things like that, and insurance. And so it really makes it hard to not touch students and to try and maintain the programs that we have. And you've been through this before. Have you seen, is there anything that we need to be doing differently than what we're doing right now?
No, and as we started out saying, I haven't really been through this before to this extent. The last time we had a major recession back in 08 and 09, the federal government stepped in with era stimulus funds, and they kind of filled the void. But that was a national recession.
Yeah.
What we've got now is a state economy issue, and that won't happen. The federal government, there will be no stimulus funds to help us weather this. We're going to have to probably do it on our own.
And how did we get here? I mean, other than we know the gross production, the oil tax, or the oil has dried up to a certain degree because of the cost of oil and the price for profit. But how else did we get here?
Well, I think that the other elements maybe of that perfect storm you talk about are the growth in student numbers over the last several years.
50,000 students more since 2008, with the same amount of money essentially, right?
Approximately. There are statements that our lawmakers are making that are true in the fact that they have increased funding to education over the last few years. The problem is that as far as funds that we can spend, that hasn't happened. Pretty much every penny in increases we've gotten has gone to fund the insurance premium increases for our employees. And so while there has been more money put into public education, it's not disposable money that we can do anything with. We collect it and we remit it directly to the state insurance people.
So when the Speaker of the House says that we did put more money into education than we ever have before, it's true, but it was money that had to be put in there to pay for health insurance for the teachers.
Right. And I'm not sure that it's ever before, but it's climbing back up, because prior to the recession, state aid to schools, state aid that we could spend was higher than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we're at the point that we've put more in than we ever have before, but they've tried to increase it since the recession recovery has happened.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I've had some conversations with legislators that there's lots of different ways. School finance is a very complicated animal with lots of moving parts to it. And you know, the thing that I've heard people concerned that we hadn't spoken soon enough about what we were going to do as a district. But you know, the final numbers of the rainy day apportionments were not given to us until the 29th of March. And so we've been trying to plan since then. I've never seen so many moving parts and things changing and so fluid from really the first of the year until now.
Exactly. And I think that after the rainy day funds were allocated to us was the first time that we had any sense of security that there weren't further cuts coming. I think we're on a little firmer footing with our feeling that that's not going to happen, that the cuts for this year are over with. So now's when we are for the first time, able to plan.
Yeah, and you know, I want to reassure the viewers that we're going to do everything that we can to protect the classroom, but they're with the, you know, we've identified probably $1.5 million that we're going to have to cut out of our budget to remain sustainable for the next school year. And so we will do those, we will make those cuts and try and protect the classroom as much as possible, but there will be larger class sizes. And I think, again, this is not just a Guthrie thing. This is across the state, and it is something that we're in this together, and we're going to figure it out together. And there's a lot of work left to be done to make our district sustainable for next year. And I appreciate your work and what you've done, and our entire staff, because they have been as willing to look at options as any bunch I've ever worked with. And so we'll get through it. We'll get through it together, and because we always do.
We do.
And this is Mike Simpson. I've got Dennis Schultz with me today. Thanks for watching Chalk Talk.